There is one genre that is quite prevalent in modern anime. The weak MC/ability is actually OP, and from the title alone, you can tell that the healer who was banished from his party is in fact the strongest, slots perfectly into that genre. In this anime, the gimmick is that our protagonist Laust is a healer who can only use the most basic healing spells, but actually excels at a lot of different things, making him, in fact, the strongest. Now, this isn't a particularly weak or strong gimmick, but what actually matters is the execution. Party Kara, as I will be calling it from here on out, sits currently at a 5.6 out of 10 on some of the more popular trackers. Party Kara is based on the light novel with the same name, which currently has 5 volumes, with the 5th one coming out after a 4-year gap, which coincides with the anime's release. The story follows Laust, the titular healer, Nasena the fighter who is in love with Laust, the greedy guild girl, and many such characters. It is similar to Goblin Slayer in that way, just not as much on the nose. Simplicity isn't necessarily a bad trait if it's not paired with shallowness. Party Kara, however, does that to such an extent that you can predict most story and plot elements without much thought. There were some standout moments in Party Kara that showed glimmers of what could have been, such as Laust's old party taking everything he did for granted, to a point where the new healer had to explain to them, hey, everything that dude did is not normal and no healer out there could do the same. Or Marnell, a bystander to Laust's abuse, who was actually sorry and had quite the character development, making him one of my favorite characters by the end of the series. But of course, in such fantasy animes, there are always antagonists and villains to our party. But in Party Kara, I didn't feel that in the beginning, to the point where I thought, is this a slice of life anime? There's no real demon lord to talk about, Laust's old party is only really mentioned in the beginning, and there's no real antagonist early on, only later, and they don't last that long. And this caused kind of a lack of stakes in the beginning, and later on, they really didn't matter because we only had like 2 or 3 episodes left anyways. Party Kara introduces a lot in its 12 episode run, but in the end it's just left as a jumbled mess and there's no really story that you could get invested in. Party Kara is of course an anime, and such I have to talk about the art and animation. Now, I'm not strict on that fact and I'm easily pleased, so keep that in mind. I really enjoyed the character design. It easily conveyed characters' classes or even their strengths without having too much visual clutter. I also enjoyed the character designs, even if they felt a little bit stereotypical and uninspired. Let me elaborate on that. While watching, I felt some of the designs were straight up lifted from other shows. Here are a few of the designs that popped into my mind while I was watching Party Kara. Of course, besides the art, there's also the animation. And oh boy, is the animation animated in the most budget-friendly way possible. There are a lot of close-ups with frozen or barely moving characters, and sections that would require more animation are either skipped entirely or just cut short. And this brings me to the worst offender, which were the battles. By the end, it felt like they've completely given up animating them. They were either stills that were shaking, or just stills entirely, to the point where they were reusing the same still 3 or 4 times, and I thought that was kind of funny and wished they would have dragged it out a little bit more. What I haven't mentioned yet is the music, and if you have watched any generic isekai in the last 10 years, you've heard this soundtrack. It's just that generic. Speaking of generic, the opening was nothing special, but it gave me some Konosuba vibes. On the other side though, we have the ending, which was a good listen and has a cute training montage animation of Nasena in her childhood. So you should definitely check that one out, even if you don't want to watch Party Kara. And this brings me to the pros and cons. Laust himself is actually not too annoyingly OP, which makes him quite tolerable. Marnell was such a fun side character that I would watch an entire OVA about this guy, and the ending song is actually pretty good. As for the cons, the animation is mostly stills, the story is bland and generic and even ends on a cliffhanger, and the villains themselves are just not interesting. In the end, Party Car proves to not be an absolute disaster, but the few things that it does neatly are just not enough to make it worth a watch, and as such I give it a rating of don't waste your time. With that being said, here are 2 shows that I think would be more worthy of your time. And this concludes this review. Do you agree or do you disagree? Is there another show you want me to check out? Just let me know down in the comments below. And while you're at it, why not like and subscribe?